The people at the southern pavilion fell silent. The younger disciples had less experience and merely found this fresh and exciting. They thought that anyone with a profound cultivation base could achieve this. On the contrary, the three elders of the old age pavilion looked at the growing plants that sprouted leaves and flowers in confusion and awe. The Buddhist merciful ark of salvation, the bright mirror, the Buddha's shine, or the Taoist forgetful maintenance could not have made a plant grow leaves and flowers this quickly. The plants were growing too fast. It was as though they were witnessing a blooming queen of the night cactus. At this moment, everyone turned to look at the room where Yongning was staying in. They felt a gentle life force washed over them like a tidal wave. It was as refreshing as a spring breeze. This was especially true for Si Wuya, who had just recently stepped out of the cave of reflection. He had been exhausted, but now he felt his exhaustion being washed away by this lethargic unique power. He frowned, still in shock. He had suspected, on several occasions, that his master had already overcome the great limit. Whether it was from his master's actions or the information he obtained after his return to the evil sky pavilion. All of the signs showed that it was highly possible that his master had overcome the great limit. The truth was so close that he could almost touch it. Yet, nobody was bold enough to admit it. This was because admitting such things usually meant they were refuting the truth. Si Wuya was in a dilemma. He was in a complicated cycle of self-doubt. The spring breeze-like power subsided. Everyone looked at the thriving plants in the pots. The flowers faced the sun that showed off the vibrant colors. Everyone had a fleeting feeling as though spring had arrived early. Did anyone see a faint blue lotus leaf floating out of the room before vanishing? Pan Zheng rubbed his eyes as he tried to confirm what he saw as he asked with a trembling voice. I thought that I was seeing things. Now that you mention it, there really was a blue lotus leaf. Zhou Jifeng chimed in. It felt really nice. I feel like I've just woken up from a dream. I'm flying. Somebody pinch me. OWW. I didn't mean literally. Keep this up, and I'll smash your mouths. Little Yuan'er glared at them. Pan Zheng and Zhou Jifeng fell silent immediately. Everyone continued looking at the door that was tightly shut. Everything inside the room returned to normal as well. Lu Zhou's divine court realm's primal qi was completely depleted. However, he merely used a quarter of the heavenly writing's extraordinary power. He noticed that Yongning looked much better now. Her cheeks now had a healthy tinge of color to them. It worked, even if the talisman seal's power was destroyed. She should not have recovered so soon. Lu Zhou looked at his own palms. He saw everything that happened just now. A huge, light blue lotus appeared. It enlarged before it vanished. The fourth heavenly writing power. Healing. Lu Zhou laid Yongning down and examined her pulse again. He confirmed that the talisman seal power inside her was gone. The corroding poison was purged as well. She was healed. Lu Zhou had trouble believing this. He stood up slowly. After making sure that there was no major problem, he walked out of the room with his hands on his back. When the door opened, Lu Zhou saw the variety of expressions on everyone's faces. He saw confusion and shock in their eyes. Why do they look like this? Have they gone bonkers because of my mathematical questions? He entertained these thoughts in his mind but did not say them out loud. He crossed the threshold with his hands on his back as he said, "She'll recover after resting." Then, he walked out of the southern pavilion. Something stirred inside of Si Wuya when he heard that. He ran into the room. The others were still stunned. The three elders of the old age pavilion had been convinced that it was impossible for Yongning to be saved. Her life could only be prolonged. At most, what did the pavilion master mean when he said that she would recover after resting? Did it not mean she was healed and only needed to recuperate? After Lu Zhou left, all of them swarmed into the room. Si Wuya was the first to reach the bed. He ran like the wind and stood beside Yongning. When saw the healthy color of her complexion, joy welled up in his heart. He stooped to check her pulse. His fingers had just found her pulse when he remembered that his cultivation base was sealed. And he could not examine her. "Allow me." Pan Lishan tossed his wine gourd bottle to Pan Zheng and walked over. He rolled up his sleeves and examined her qi. His primal qi entered Yongning. The others looked at Pan Lishan as they waited for the results of his examination. Pan Lishan's expression gradually changed to one of confusion. He frowned before his eyes suddenly widened. Awe and shock brimmed in his eyes. How? Impossible. Old Pan. How's she? Pan Jung walked up to him and asked. Impossible. Impossible. How can this be? Pan Lishan mumbled incessantly. Everyone shook their heads. What did he mean by it was not possible? Leng Luo stepped forward. He raised his palm and extended his chi as well. His primal chi descended. His movements were much more fluid than Pan Lishan. However, halfway through his examination, it could be seen he was clearly slower. Yet, with the silver mask on his face, nobody could see his expression. He took a step backward and hoarsely said, "That's strange." Hua Wudao could no longer restrain himself. He examined her as well. There was no doubting the standing of the three elders in the evil sky pavilion. Their words bore weight. The others looked at the three elders and waited for an answer. Elders, how is she? Just when Hua Wudao was about to reply, Pan Lishan rose to his feet and stretched before he said, "Well, something came up." He hurried out of the room, covering 300 feet in a single stride. He vanished in just a blink of an eye. The others were baffled. Was this how an elder should behave? How shameless. Leng Luo shook his head. He placed his hands on his back and walked out of the room. He had always been eccentric and seldom associated himself with the group. The others did not dare stop him. They merely looked as Leng Luo walked out of the room without a word. He soon vanished as well. They could only turn to look at Hua Wudao. Learning from the collective mistake, they stood in a row and blocked the way just when Hua Wudao was turning to leave. Elder Hua, how's she? Hua Wudao coughed a few times. He had an unnatural expression on his wizened face as he said, "She's all right now." Upon hearing this, Si Wuya felt a sense of relief coursing through his body. Elder Hua, didn't you say it's impossible to save her? Zhu Honggong asked. Didn't you? I don't think so. Hua Wudao emboldened himself and walked out of the room. This time, nobody stopped him. After the three elders have left, the others rolled their eyes. Told you master can do it. Little Yuan said. Xiao Yue nodded and said, "That's enough. Let's give her some peace and quiet." The others left the room. Meanwhile, Lu Zhou did not return to the eastern pavilion. He went into the forest behind the mountain. He found a withered tree and remembered his latest experience. He raised his palm. The scripts of the heavenly writings power surfaced in his mind again. Visiting many places without having to move. Reaping many benefits as a result. A miniature blue lotus emerged from his palm and glowed with faint blue light. Lu Zhou deliberately suppressed the burst of extraordinary power. He made it surge out slowly before he pushed his palm forward. A blue lotus shot out from his palm and landed on the withered tree. Then, the withered tree visibly came to life. It sprouted leaves and grew. Perhaps, it was due to him only using a small amount of extraordinary power. The tree had only grown slightly before stopping. This confirmed Lu Zhou's thoughts. In other words, the fourth heavenly writing power was like a healing technique. However, it was much more effective and rejuvenating compared to ordinary healing techniques. Lu Zhou nodded in satisfaction after confirming his guess. Well, then, are there any more heaven writing powers? Lu Zhou thought to himself as he returned to the eastern pavilion to look at the old parchment drawing. When he finally saw the old parchment drawing, he was shocked to find 9 provinces shown on the map. Yi province in the southwest, Qing and Yang provinces in the east, Ji and Yan provinces in the north, Yong province in the northwest, Liang province in the west, and Yu and Jing provinces in the central area. The map of Great Yan's 9 provinces now laid before him. Is this a hint that the next open heavenly writing scroll is scattered across the 9 provinces? The area the 9 provinces covered were vast. If Lu Zhou did not have a good flying chariot or a mount like Bayan, it would have been much easier to ascend the heavens than to traverse the 9 provinces. Lu Zhou would not encounter much of a problem if he stuck to the human settlements. However, it would be exceptionally dangerous once he set foot in uninhabited areas such as the forest and the desert. Even with Yu Shangrung's cultivation base, it took him a long time to reach Wuxian Mountain on his sword. The other parts of the parchment were still blank. However, judging by the layout of the land, Lu Zhou could tell that Rongxi was to the west while Rongbei was to the north. Those were the lands of the other tribes. The old parchment drawing hovered in front of Lu Zhou as he continued to study it. It was much larger than he had expected. The table could barely support it. He could not help but frown when he saw that there were still many blank parts. What are these places? Even Ji Tiandao had only gone as far as Rongxi and Rongbei. Most of the time, he was in Great Yan. Ji Tiandao did not know much about places beyond Rongxi and Rongbei. After a while, Lu Zhou lowered the old parchment drawing and no longer looked at it. He recalled Si Wuya's words and muttered to himself, "That man is temperamental and cannot be trusted. Is anyone outside?" Swoosh! A figure appeared outside of the eastern pavilion. "Your orders, master." It was little Yuanair. "Send a letter to Ming Shi Yin. Have him investigate the Darknet." Lu Zhou said. "Oh, but how are we supposed to find members of the Darknet?" Little Yuanair asked as she scratched her head. "The Cave of Reflection." Understood. Little Yuanair turned around and left. Meanwhile, in front of the Scholar Cave in Duanlan Branch, many Duanlan Branch disciples were bowing at the cave's entrance. They said in unison in a thunderously loud voice, "Congratulations on coming out of your secluded cultivation, Patriarch." Whiz! The stone door slid open, and an old man with white hair emerged from the Scholar Cave. He did not seem energetic. In fact, he looked downright exhausted. However, his gaze was sharp. Nobody doubted his status and glory. This old man was none other than the old patriarch of the Duanlan branch. Chang Yan. I know about Chang Jian. At this moment, the first disciple, Xiao Jinan, stepped forward and gloomily said, "Patriarch, the evil sky pavilion is too much. The sword devil, Yu Shangrong, crossed the heavenly moat and killed the sect master. Apart from that, the Celestial Masters sect's Grand Elder, Hengchu branch's Grand Elder, the Good Fortune Temple's abbot, and many others were also killed by Yu Shangrong. So long as the evil sky pavilion isn't destroyed, we'll never have peace in the cultivation world. We had no choice but to implore you to come out of your secluded cultivation." Patriarch. Chang Yan looked at the others and asked, "The evil sky pavilion, old villain Ji isn't dead yet?" Xiao Jinan recounted everything that happened recently to Chang Yan. He made sure to mention the rumors of Yu Shangrong being heavily injured by Zhang Yuenshan and the withering of plants across half of Golden Court Mountain. Upon hearing Xiao Jinan's words, Chang Yan frowned slightly as he said, "Old villain Ji's great limit is near. How is he maintaining his peak cultivation base?" In reply to your question, Patriarch, old villain Ji has absorbed the Golden Court Mountain's barrier to maintain his strength. Currently, the barrier is gone. The 7 major sects of the Noble Path have formed a fiend extermination alliance. So long as we make ample preparation, we stand a good chance of taking down the Golden Court Mountain. Xiao Jinan said. Chang Yan shook his head and said, "I heard that the 10 great sects laid siege on Golden Court Mountain twice and failed." Patriarch. They had miscalculated during their first 2 attempts. This time, the Noble Path's alliance took their time preparing. This is a good opportunity for us to try and gain a firmer footing in the cultivation world. Xiao Jinan said. When he saw the Patriarch seemed unmoved, he added, "Otherwise, are we supposed to let the sect master's death go unavenged?" The latter part of Xiao Jinan's words was similar to Chang Yan's thoughts. A life for a life. This had been the way of the world since time immemorial. Chang Yan could disregard the happenings in the past. However, the cultivation world had its own rules to function. It was the survival of the fittest as it always had been. However, what could he do? Chang Yan sighed softly and said, "My cultivation base has already deteriorated to the 2-leaf nascent divinity realm. The disciples of the evil sky pavilion are highly talented. How are we supposed to stand up to them?" Patriarch, if you would look at this. Xiao Jinan gestured with his hand. 2 disciples carried something between them from the back of the crowd. It was covered by a red cloth. Xiao Jinan removed the cover. Vials of liquid were presented to the Patriarch. "What are these?" Chang Yan frowned. "Primal fiend potions." Chang Yan was the only one who was shocked. The others seemed calm. Primal fiend potion was a banned substance in the cultivation world. Consuming this potion would boost one's cultivation base to its peak. But the consequences were dire as well. Those with weak minds would be bewitched by the potion and lose all sense of reason before they turn mad and go on a frenzied killing spree. When the potion wore off, the user would experience extreme exhaustion. There was also the possibility of the user's cultivation base declining greatly. The side effects were too great to ignore. Chang Yan regarded the primal fiend potions with a complicated gaze. He said in a deep voice, "How dare you?" Was this not clearly asking him to give up his life? Xiao Jinan fell to his knees immediately. The other members prostrated themselves on the ground. "Patriarch, we have no other choice. I'm willing to accept any kind of punishment. For all your disciples in the branch. Please think about it." Xiao Jinan knocked his head thrice on the ground. 3 loud thuds rang in the air. The others kowtowed as well. The sight of hundreds of disciples kowtowing in unison was rather impressive. Loud thuds rang in the air. Chang Yan's wizened face twitched. His thoughts were complicated. Indeed, his great limit was fast approaching. By right, he should spend the rest of his days in the Scholar Cave while tending to his own health until the day came where he would be buried with a grand ritual. He would then return to dust and be free from the shackles of this life. However, he could not be at peace with Chang Jian's death. Chang Yan understood Xiao Jinan's meaning. Everybody would die. His great limit was nearing. After all, why not use this opportunity to grant them a blessing before his death? In truth, when he learned of Chang Jian's death, this thought had crossed his mind as well. However, he did not have the energy to make a decision. He found himself in a dilemma as he looked at his kneeling and kowtowing disciples. He finally said in a deep voice that resounded in the area, "That's enough." Everyone stopped moving immediately. Chang Yan waved his hand. A vial flew into his hand as he said, "I'll consider this proposal. But..." He paused before continuing to say, "We must be careful in exterminating the evil Sky Pavilion. After all, the Duanlan branch is no match for the major sects." Xiao Jinan was overjoyed. He said, "Don't worry, Patriarch. The Fiend Extermination Alliance has already formulated a plan that would ensure our success. All we have to do is cooperate with them. When the time comes, you might not even need the Primal Fiend Potion. Patriarch." Chang Yan glanced at Xiao Jinan. Without saying another word, he waved his sleeve and returned to the cave. "Take care, Patriarch." Chang Yan returned to the cave. The Duanlan branch disciples rose to their feet. As the first disciple, Xiao Jinan was now in charge of overseeing the management of the branch. While the elders remained in secluded cultivation, he had no choice but to shoulder the responsibility. Eldest senior brother, should we inform the Patriarch about the theory of severing the Golden Lotus? Someone asked. Xiao Jinan shook his head and said, even if we were to tell him about it, we should only do so after the evil Sky Pavilion is dealt with. The Patriarch's great limit is near. Severing his Golden Lotus would only expedite his death. Having survived until now, the Duanlan branch has to take drastic measures. The core disciples who stood in front of Xiao Jinan nodded. Xiao Jinan continued to say, also, none of the Duanlan branch disciples are allowed to sever the Golden Lotuses. This is our chance to see if we can establish ourselves in the cultivation world. ... At night, all was quiet in the evil Sky Pavilion. Below the northern pavilion, on a rock on the cliff face halfway up the mountain, the 3 elders were staring at the moon. I don't understand how the pavilion master managed that. The energy blade contained a talisman curse. Even an elite from the Celestial Masters sect would have a hard time nullifying the curse. Pan Lishan said as he leaned against a rock. Hua Wudao said, if you don't understand it. Elder Pan, how could I understand it? I've repeatedly examined Princess Yong Ning's extraordinary 8 meridians. Her damaged meridian vessels seem magically healed. The 2 of them looked at Leng Luo, who wore a silver mask. Leng Luo looked at the moon as he stood with his hands on his back and said, I'm not as old as the pavilion master, but I think that I'm knowledgeable enough. Yet, I've never seen such a unique healing method before. Old Leng, didn't you survive after self-destructing with heavy injuries back then? Pan Lishan asked. Leng Luo glanced at him. Pan Lishan no longer tried to joke with Leng Luo. He said, how much of his strength do you think the pavilion master is keeping from us? Hua Wudao shook his head. On the surface, the pavilion master's cultivation base is only at the Dao transforming stage of the Divine Court realm. However, I think he's still at the peak of the 8-leaf stage. Indeed, the pavilion master's strength is unfathomable. However, I can't help but think that the pavilion master is already at the 9-leaf stage. Pan Lishan said with a chuckle. Leng Luo and Hua Wudao looked at Pan Lishan in unison. In fact, both of them had this thought for a long time now. However, they were confused. Why would the pavilion master go so far to pretend he was only in the divine court realm instead of dealing with all the forces who opposed the evil sky pavilion? He allowed these forces to grow. And now, these forces had formed the Fiend Extermination Alliance. 9 Leaf. That's rather impossible. Moreover, since the pavilion master shared the method of severing the golden lotuses, it means he's also seeking ways to attain the 9 Leaf stage. You have a point. However, how would you explain what happened with Princess Yongning? Pan Lishan asked. Leng Luo glanced at Pan Lishan before he pushed away from the ground swiftly. He flew to the evil sky pavilion with his hands on his back, leaving these words in his wake. Even if I know the reason, I wouldn't tell you. Elder Hua, what about you? Pan Lishan looked at Hua Wudao amiably. Don't worry, although I'm older than you, you're the only one I can comfortably talk to in the evil sky pavilion. Hua Wudao was slightly taken aback. Why did this sound like a threat? He rose to his feet immediately and said, I have something to attend to. Hua Yuxing is trying to attain the 3-leaf stage recently. I should watch over her. Old Hua, don't tell me this is a folly of your youth. Pan Lishan laughed. Hua Wudao appeared embarrassed. He activated the 8 trigrams circle under his feet and left with blinding speed. Pan Lishan was alone now. He lay on the rock and looked at the bright moon, as though in a daze. He muttered to himself, quote, If only I were 200 years younger. He had barely finished speaking when he heard a sound from below. Rustle. Pan Lishan's ears twitched. He smacked the rock with a palm. Bam! He spun upward and allowed gravity to run its course. He said sternly, Who dares trespass upon this land? Then, he launched a hand seal toward the forest nearby. Bam! The hand seal sailed into the forest and vanished from sight. The rustling noise stopped. What an incredible speed! Pan Lishan dove and flew above the treetops. He vanished from sight. Although he had yet to completely recover his cultivation base and was heavily injured from the battle with Barma, it did not mean cultivators could easily escape under his nose. Russell, found you. Pan Lishan tossed his gourd bottle out. He dove toward the foot of the mountain at lightning speed. However, when he arrived at the foot of the mountain, he stopped giving chase. He was an experienced man after all. Trying to lure the tiger off the mountain. Fat chance of that happening. After Pan Lishan finished speaking, he did not hesitate and turn around to leave. At this moment, a voice rang in the air. Why don't we have a chat? Senior. Pan Lishan frowned. He turned around to look at the dark forest. Who are you? I'm Feng Lu of the Zhenqing branch. Feng Lu emerged from behind a tree. Feng Lu. Pan Lishan had never heard of this minor character. He racked his memories and confirmed he really did not know nor heard of this person. He scoffed and said, This is Golden Court Mountain, the territory of the Evil Sky Pavilion. I advise you to leave as quickly as you can. If you're caught by the Evil Sect Pavilion disciples, I won't be responsible for whatever fate befalls you. Feng Lu bowed and said, My master, Zhenqing branch's master, Feng Qing'er, has met you several times. Old senior, you're Feng Qing'er's disciple. I am. Zhenqing branch was once one of the 10 great sects. During the Clarity sect's golden days, they, naturally, had good relations with the branch. Pan Lishan descended on the ground. He studied Feng Lu for a brief moment before he asked, What business do you have with me? Feng Lu was about to start a lengthy speech when Pan Lishan said in a deep voice, Make it short, my time is precious. Feng Lu was slightly taken aback. He was prepared to make a speech about the Noble Path's principles and talk about the Clarity sect's destruction by Yu Zhenghai's hands. Yu Zhenghai was the Evil Sky Pavilion's disciple. Pan Lishan was living with his enemies. After all, he really did not expect that Pan Lishan did not give him a chance at all. When he regained his composure, he said, Old senior, the Noble Path's Fiend Extermination Alliance has been formed. The Evil Sky Pavilion will be destroyed sooner or later. Swoosh! Pan Lishan suddenly tossed his gourd bottle out. It shone with a golden light. Feng Lu defended himself with his arms. Bam! Feng Lu stumbled 3 steps backward before he regained his footing. You're as powerful as ever. Old senior, as expected, your cultivation base is being restored. Alas, your internal wounds are serious. Pan Lishan was slightly shocked. He did not expect Feng Qing'er's disciple to possess such a profound cultivation base. However, his expression remained unchanged as he said, "Did you come here to try and drive a wedge between me and the evil Sky Pavilion? The fiend path is cruel and vicious. It deserves to be persecuted. Yu Zhenghai has ravaged the 9 provinces, and the people are living in misery. Old senior, shut your pee-hole," Pan Lishan said in a deep voice. "Very well. In that case, all I ask of you is that you fulfill your promise. Old senior, I'm sure you remember how my master helped you leave the Clarity sect all those years ago." Feng Lu said. Pan Lishan remained silent. Feng Lu bowed and said, "Truth be told, Feng Ping is my younger twin brother. He ran into old villain Ji in Liang province and has lost his cultivation base. He's now a good-for-nothing. My demand isn't excessive. Of the 9 evil Sky Pavilion disciples, pick one and destroy his or her cultivation base. With that, the debt between you and my master will be considered paid. What do you say?" Pan Lishan said. "What does my personal affair with Feng Qing'er have to do with the evil Sky Pavilion? Are you going to disregard your debt of favor with my master?" Feng Lu asked. He was genuinely worried that Pan Lishan would respond in the positive. After all, Pan Lishan had joined the Fiend Path. However, Pan Lishan was from the Clarity sect after all. He was once the greatest elite of the sect. It was not in his nature to leave his debts unpaid. When he was saved by the 4th prince, he spent many years at the borders just to repay the life-saving debt. In the end, Pan Lishan said, "A junior such as yourself has no right to talk to me. I want to meet Feng Qing'er. That can be arranged. Old senior, this way please." The 2 of them traveled southeast through the air. 4 hours later, the night grew even darker. While they were flying, Feng Lu asked, "Old senior, with your identity and standing, you could have easily joined any of the 7 great sects. You'd be an elder, at least. Why must you join the evil Sky Pavilion?" "Because I like it. Although old villain Ji's cultivation base is terrifyingly profound, he still can't defy the will of the heavens. Moreover, at his age, he can't sever his golden lotus to cultivate." Feng Lu said. Pan Lishan glanced at him and asked, "You know about that method as well?" "The method of severing the lotus has spread in the entire cultivation world. Everybody knows about it," Feng Lu replied. Pan Lishan sneered and said, "If I were you, I'd live in seclusion and study the method of severing the lotus. When I'm at the 9-leaf stage, nobody will be able to stop me from taking out the evil Sky Pavilion. Time waits for no man. It takes too long to reach the 9-leaf stage. There are many treasures and cultivation methods in the evil Sky Pavilion. Almost every sect covets them." It seemed like Feng Lu was finally honest about his intention. At the end of the day, their motivation was the benefits they would gain from taking down the evil Sky Pavilion. It had nothing to do with being on the noble or fiend paths. If their true goal was to take down Ji Tiandao, they could have just patiently waited out 10 years. Why were they so insistent on taking down the evil Sky Pavilion when it would lead to heavy casualties? The quarrels and disputes in the world were fundamentally caused by greed. Feng Lu suddenly stopped flying. As he hovered in the air, he said, "Old senior, why don't you join Zhenqing branch? Our master has said that if you're willing to join us, the seat of the first elder will be yours." Feng Lu said. Pan Lishan suddenly found this young man's impudence grating. He said, "Don't you understand what I've said to you?" "I don't. You will once I meet Feng Qing'er." Pan Lishan said, "I'm afraid you won't be meeting my master." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 100 cultivators suddenly appeared on the treetops. Several of them knocked their bows, and some of them circled the air above their heads. A trap. Pan Lishan scowled. He did not expect the Zhenqing branch's Feng Lu to resort to such lowly methods. Feng Lu retreated in the air. With a smile, he said, "I had no choice. I wanted to persuade you to return. But since you refuse, you'll be buried here." Pan Lishan wielded his wine gourd bottle, and he descended. He was at the center, surrounded by cultivators on all sides. "I thought Feng Qing'er is a man who knew how to differentiate between right and wrong. It seems like I'm wrong." Pan Lishan raised the wine gourd bottle in his hand and took huge swigs from it. In just a brief moment, he emptied the wine gourd. His clothes were wet from the wine that spilled from the edges of his mouth. Feng Lu said, "It's useless to talk about morality with those on the fiend path. I've said everything I wanted to say. You're no longer at your peak. If you quietly surrender, you might be left with an intact corpse." Pan Lishan tossed the bottle out. The wine gourd turned golden as it circled him. "You're right, I'm heavily injured, and I'm no longer at my peak. Even so," he paused for a moment. His voice deepened as he said in a deafeningly loud voice, "I am not so weak so as to be pushed around by the likes of you." Boom! Pan Lishan stomped his feet on the ground and shot into the air like a fired arrow. He attacked without warning as his wine gourd shone with a blindingly bright golden light. The light grew larger and shrouded him. Boom! 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 A dozen cultivators reeled back as they were hit by the golden gourd bottle. They spat out mouthfuls of blood in the sky. "Intoxicated world, how do you like that?" Feng Lu shouted. "What a wonderful cultivation base. Shoot him down." Several archers in the distance fired their energy arrows at Pan Lishan. Arrows sailed across the sky like meteors toward Pan Lishan. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Pan Lishan tossed his golden gourd bottle out again. He dove. Boom, boom, boom. The wine gourd circled around Pan Lishan and parried all the energy arrows. "Continue," Feng Lu ordered. Drunk on the mountain, Pan Lishan descended and suddenly shot to the side. He left the range of the energy arrows at lightning speed, and his gourd bottle immediately crashed on two nearby cultivators. Boom, boom. The two of them were sent flying back. Their 10 worlds avatar flashed briefly before vanishing. Pan Lishan laughed and said, "It's been a long time since I've behaved this freely. If this is all Feng Qing'er has, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. This is only the beginning." Feng Lu waved his hand. More than 10 cultivators lunged at Pan Lishan from all directions. Since he was in the middle, he felt the pressure from all sides. He fought hard to keep the lump in his chest down and to stabilize his old wounds as best he could. Then, he said, "Drunk on the battlefield." Swoosh! Pan Lishan suddenly descended like a huge rock. When his feet touched the ground, a loud boom resonated in the air. After he evaded the attacks, he threw his golden gourd bottle out again. Bam! 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 The golden gourd bottle was moving extremely fast and formed a golden circle in the air. A dozen or so cultivators retreated immediately. "He's powerful. Isn't he injured? Why is he so powerful?" As the cultivators retreated, they regarded Pan Lishan with a shocked expression. This shows the Fiend Extermination Alliance's plan is right. In any case, he must die. Feng Lu commanded the cultivators again. "Archers, don't stop firing." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Feng Lu's voice had barely faded when dozens of energy arrows shot toward Pan Lishan. Pan Lishan looked at Feng Lu as a burst of energy surged out of his body. Bam, bam, bam. The energy arrows dispersed. Pan Lishan flew toward Feng Lu. "Eldest senior brother, stand back." The cultivators in the surroundings joined their palms and formed script seals. The air was suddenly filled with script seals. Pan Lishan had no choice but to call off his assault. He descended again and looked up. The Confucian sect's expansive energy seal. The Confucian sect's expansive energy seal was a kind of expansive heavenly energy. All they did was condense the energy into seals and shape them into scripts. It was fundamentally similar to the Taoist talisman seal, although the Taoist seal required more brush strokes. The scripts danced in the skies. They consolidated rhythmically and dove toward Pan Lishan. Block. The golden gourd bottle hovered before him and spun rapidly. The script seals kept attacking while the gourd bottle parried them. Bam, bam, bam. The sounds of collision seemed never-ending, and ripples of colliding energies could be seen everywhere. Pan Lishan's arms were growing numb from the impact. At this moment, Feng Lu shot toward Pan Lishan with a sword in his hand. At the same time, he summoned his 6-leaf avatar. Whiz! Expansive energy sword. A great surge of energy wrapped around the sword in Feng Lu's hand, turning it into a shining golden sword. The sword shot toward Pan Lishan like a bullet. Pan Lishan waved his arm. The gourd bottle rose slightly. He clapped his hands together. Bam! Pan Lishan caught the sword between his hands. However, he was pushed backward by the force of the sword. He wrapped his feet in energy as he slid backward, leaving 2 shallow indents. When he finally stopped moving, the energy sword was barely half a foot away from him. His golden gourd bottle still circled him, deflecting the incoming energy arrows. Trying to sneak up on me. You're old. Just like old villain G. Old. The first elite of the Clarity sect can't even hold his own against a 6-leaf cultivator like myself. Why do you have to throw your life away for that old villain? You're still too green, child. Pan Lishan's palms shone with a golden light before it quickly turned red like molten iron. He held the tip of Feng Lu's sword tightly between his palms. Their primal chis and energies battled it out and buzzed loudly. The golden gourd bottle continued to parry the incoming energy arrows above their heads as loud crashes rang in their ears. Pan Lishan stomped his feet to stabilize himself. He stopped moving backward as primal chi erupted from his body. Bam! Feng Lu was pushed backward by the sudden blast of energy. His sword flew into the air. He somersaulted a few times before he landed on his feet again. At this moment, he looked at Pan Lishan fearfully. His arms had gone numb from this exchange, and he felt a pain in his chest as his blood essence roiled in his body. As the saying went, a starving and emaciated camel is still larger than a horse. At the same time, the wine gourd bottle fell into Pan Lishan's palm. Whiz! Shining golden energy wrapped around Pan Lishan, completely keeping the incoming energy arrows at bay. Since he possessed a heaven-grade weapon, the sword path elites around him did not dare to recklessly make a move. They only circled in the air, looking for an opening. Your cultivation base hasn't recovered yet, and you're heavily wounded. However, you're able to hold for so long. I'm impressed. Feng Lu's gaze was lively. Pan Lishan shook his wine gourd bottle. Unfortunately, it was empty. He had no more wine to drink. Boring. It'll get interesting in a moment. Feng Lu waved his arm again. The dozen or so sword path cultivators dove with their swords. Really? Pan Lishan hurled his wine gourd bottle out again. The gourd bottle shone even more blindingly than before. Bam! 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 The cultivators were sent flying back. However, the energy arrows did not relent. In any case, you won't be able to last long. Script seals sailed in the air again like fluttering butterflies. The cultivators from Zhenking branch disciples surrounded Pan Lishan on all sides. They kept making hand signs and condensing their chis. Script seals and energy seals began to cordon off the area around Pan Lishan. Script seal formation. Script seals more powerful than the previous ones flew toward Pan Lishan. Pan Lishan's gourd bottle kept the script seals at bay. It flew at a greater speed. At this moment, he began to cough. Upon seeing this, an expression of joy appeared on the Zhenking branch disciples' faces. This was their chance. Go! A circle of cultivators advanced with their script seals. Pan Lishan shouted, thoroughly drunk. When the script seal descended, the wine gourd bottle suddenly unleashed dozens of energy seals. Every energy seal was shaped like the wine gourd bottle as they shot in all directions. Bam! 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 Wine gourd bottle seals. Feng Lu frowned slightly. He looked at Pan Lishan, who was at the center of the pincer attack, with a grave expression. At this moment, Pan Lishan vanished from sight. He ricocheted through the surroundings like a flitting phantom. Swoosh! 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 Bam! 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 Two cultivators reeled back. They spat out mouthfuls of blood and died on the spot. The script seals kept flying toward Pan Lishan and landed on the wine gourd bottle energy seals. The collision of energies made the air in the surroundings violently turbulent. Pan Lishan moved as though he was drunk. He tottered and crashed onto someone or something. A wine gourd bottle energy seal would attack in coordination. For a time, both sides were engaged in an intense battle. Feng Lu rose into the air and shouted, "Hold him down!" He knew Pan Lishan had internal injuries. There would be no problem so long as they could hold him down. Bam! 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 The script seals were attacking with a much higher frequency. Feng Lu kept his eyes on the flitting Pan Lishan. Avatar! Whiz! 100 Tribulations Insight with 6 leaves appeared in the air. The others summoned their avatars as well. It seemed as though the entire forest was on fire. The instant Feng Lu summoned his avatar, he looked at Pan Lishan's moving figure and said, "Now." His sword sailed through the air. With his avatar in tow, he made a beeline for Pan Lishan with his sword before him. Pan Lishan instantly felt a chill on his back and turned around. Break! Feng Lu yelled. Pan Lishan instinctively moved his wine gourd bottle energy seal in front of him. Bam! This time, Pan Lishan was sent flying back. However, he did not fly too far back, and the altitude was not too high. He landed on the ground with a thud. The script seals and wine gourd bottle energy seals vanished. The entire place fell silent. The disciples of the Zhenqing branch looked down from the skies at Pan Lishan, who fell on the ground. Feng Lu's attack had successfully landed. Pan Lishan lay on the ground as he looked up into the sky. He felt the lump in his chest threatening to escape. He gave a strange, guttural laugh. It was not as if he could not block Feng Lu's attack. His reflexes merely could not keep up. He had sufficient experience, knowledge, and skills to counter it. Alas, he still could not keep up. Accept your fate, old senior. Feng Lu landed. His sword was in his right hand as he walked toward Pan Lishan. Pan Lishan chuckled. He supported his weight with his hands and sat up with great difficulty. To think that Feng Qing'er taught a disciple like you. Feng Lu did not miss the barb in Pan Lishan's words. He raised his hand and sent a hand seal toward Pan Lishan. The hand seal landed on Pan Lishan. Bam! Pan Lishan defended himself by crossing his arms. He slid backward. Feng Lu smiled. The first elite of the Clarity sect. Pan Lishan, you're nothing. Pan Lishan launched into another coughing fit. Blood trickled down the edge of his lips. Someone from the side said, "Eldest senior brother, let's not waste words with him. The branch master has told us to finish this as quickly as possible. There's no need to rush. I've never fought an elite such as him before. He's an 8-leaf cultivator." Feng Lu smiled, clearly feeling pleased with himself. Everyone desired to be respected, to be an elite feared and revered by all. When Feng Lu saw Pan Lishan make no attempt to get up, he raised his hand again and launched another hand seal. Bam! Pan Lishan slid backward again. "Senior, please don't hold back. I've always wanted to witness your glorious strength," Feng Lu said mockingly as he launched another hand seal. Bam! Pan Lishan flew backward again. Feng Lu continued moving forward in this manner while pushing Pan Lishan back with his hand seals. "See, this is the so-called 8-leaf expert." Feng Lu reveled in this feeling of trampling on an expert. Perhaps Feng Lu was taking too long. One of the disciples called out again, "Eldest senior brother, we can't afford to dally any longer." Feng Lu nodded. His gaze grew colder. At this moment, the Zhenqing branch disciples surrounded Feng Lu in the air. They looked down at Pan Lishan who was lying on the ground. Feng Lu said, "Old senior, if you have to blame someone, blame yourself for picking the wrong side." He raised his sword and wrapped his energy around it, causing the sword to vibrate. Pan Lishan suddenly launched into another violent coughing fit. His chest rose and fell heavily. This released the lump in his chest as he spat out blood. After that, he laughed as he looked at the Zhenqing branch disciples who were looking down at him. He looked at the starry sky and many glorious scenes from days of old flashed before him. He saw himself as a young man full of mettle. He continued to laugh. His laughter rang deafeningly in the air. All of a sudden, he slammed his palms on the ground. "If I could turn back time and become a young man again, I'd wipe those smirks off your faces." All of a sudden, primal chi surged from his Danshan sea of chi and condensed into energy swords that shot in all directions. The energy swords charged toward the cultivators like a storm. "This is bad. Retreat." Feng Lu's eyes widened as he summoned his avatar and retreated as quickly as he could. The Zhenqing branch disciples retreated as well. Pan Lishan's gaze was sharp. He summoned his avatar as his energy sword surrounded him. 8-leaf golden lotus. The 100 tribulations insight. With one hand tightly gripping the golden gourd bottle, his eyes were fixed on the retreating Feng Lu. Feng Lu's expression changed drastically. He was shaken and flustered. He wanted to leave as quickly as he could. But Pan Lishan was on him. He nearly forgot that his opponent was once the greatest elite of the Clarity sect. It was unthinkable for such a Taoist elite to not be skilled with the sword. Such an elite would never allow himself to be powerless or defenseless. Pan Lishan flew at Feng Lu with his avatar and energy swords. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The cultivators within the range of the energy swords were dismembered by the energy swords easily as though the swords were slicing fruits. Their severed limbs rained down on the forest below. The cultivators who were further away fled as quickly as they could. Pan Lishan only had eyes for Feng Lu. He followed Feng Lu. An 8-leaf avatar pursuing a 6-leaf avatar was like an adult chasing after a child. Feng Lu felt more desperate as time went by. His eyes were brimming with fear. The energy swords left the earth flattened in its wake. Trees fell as though they were made of dominoes. Impossible! Feng Lu's voice cracked. The 8-leaf golden lotus avatar was looking down on him just like how he was looking down at Pan Lishan just moments ago. Pan Lishan said, "It's been a long time since I've unsealed my golden gourd bottle. I'll unseal it for you today." Whiz! The golden gourd bottle shone brightly and shot toward Feng Lu. Boom! Feng Lu did not even have the chance to cry out when the golden gourd bottle landed around him. A round pit appeared before Pan Lishan. The red glow on Pan Lishan's face gradually disappeared at this moment. His 8-leaf avatar paused slightly in midair before fading away. Thud! Pan Lishan fell into the round crater. Everything was plunged into silence and darkness. The Zhenking disciples who had gone through much trouble to escape looked at the vanishing avatar incredulously. Nobody dared to get closer. They were already heavily wounded. Most of their number had been killed by Pan Lishan's sudden attack with his energy swords. Those who survived were just a handful of their initial force. Head back and report this to the branch master. Eldest senior brother died in battle against Pan Lishan. Pan Lishan burned his Danshan Sea of Qi. Let's go. The remaining members were not bold enough to move forward. They turned around and vanished into the darkness. Meanwhile, Pan Lishan lay in the crater for quite some time. He spent most of his life living a nomadic lifestyle, moving from one place to another. The skies were his blanket, and the earth was his bed. He was already used to resting in such uncomfortable environments. Although he had burned his Danshan Sea of Qi, he did not regret it. Inside the meeting hall of Zhenking branch, Feng Qing'er listened to his disciples' reports and frowned. Feng Lu is dead. He had difficulty believing this. Eldest senior brother and Pan Lishan had a bloody battle. Who knew the old fart would burn his own Sea of Qi? Feng Qing'er's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. He was so frustrated that his fists trembled when he clenched them in frustration. An elder at the side bowed and said, "Branch master, we should prioritize the bigger picture. Pan Lishan has burned his Sea of Qi. This means he has lost the ability to fight. Hua Wudao is a cowardly tortoise. The men of the Seven Stars Villa can easily deal with him." It's said that Leng Luo was heavily wounded in Tangzi town. The Celestial Masters sect can deal with him. With their talisman seals working against his Dao invisibility, he won't be able to get away. The Hengchu branch, Duanlan branch, Good Fortune Temple, and Core Heart sect will work with us to deal with old villain G. Upon hearing this, Feng Qing'er's rage subsided somewhat. He said, "We can't underestimate the evil Sky Pavilion disciples. That Duan Musheng and Ming Shi Yin are being restricted by old villain G. But they're not to be taken lightly. Moreover, now that Si Wuya is with them, we have to be careful. Si Wuya is a traitor of the evil Sky Pavilion. Knowing old villain G's temper, Si Wuya won't be treated kindly. Yu Shangrung's fate is unknown, but I doubt he'll appear. The other disciples aren't powerful enough to turn things around. What about Yu Zhenghai?" Feng Qing'er was worried about Yu Zhenghai the most. After all, Yu Zhenghai was the evil Sky Pavilion's first disciple. On the surface, he was the greatest traitor of the evil Sky Pavilion. However, anyone with keen eyes could tell that even though the Nether sect was powerful, it remained respectful to the evil Sky Pavilion. It was no longer considered news in the cultivation world that the four great protectors would turn tail and run whenever they saw the evil Sky Pavilion's master. "Don't worry, branch master. Yu Zhenghai is fighting with the imperial family right now. To make things more difficult for him, the people of the Core Heart sect have gone to Ruli. The Nether sect won the battle in Liang province, killed the 4th prince and 2.000 elites from Ruli and Lulan. The royals of Ruli want nothing more than to tear Yu Zhenghai apart." The elder said. Upon hearing this, Feng Qing'er frowned again. He said, "The Core Heart sect is colluding with Ruli. The other tribesmen are other tribesmen. After all, I'm sure the goal is to plunge Great Yan into chaos. Right, then." He stopped to sigh before he said, The 7 great sects can't stop now. The Hengchu branch went as far as summoning their patriarch out of his seclusion. Although Feng Lu is dead, it's not in vain. If they did not contribute more, what reason would they have to claim a bigger share of the loot when the evil sky pavilion was destroyed? Feng Qing sighed again. Send someone to the site of the battle. Find Feng Lu's body and give him a proper burial. Understood. Inside the evil sky pavilion's eastern pavilion, Lu Zhou studied the old parchment drawing for some time before he finally stopped. He crossed his legs and sat down to study the heavenly writing power. Currently, he had mastered 4 heavenly writing powers. The first being the power of speech, a sound technique. The second was the power of muting, an aerial attack. The third was the power of past lives, a sort of mimicry technique. And the fourth was the power of immaterial existence, a sort of healing technique. He had used the first 3 powers many times and had basically understood them. However, he was not familiar with the 4th power. It seemed like a healing skill, but it was able to restore vitality as well. If that was the case, could he use it on the members of the Old Age Pavilion to help them recover their cultivation bases more quickly? Lu Zhou was still mulling over this matter when Zhao Yue's voice rang from outside. Master, a letter from 4th senior brother. Read it. Zhao Yue read aloud. Master, I've spread the information about the severing the golden lotus everywhere I went. Apart from that, I found out the Fiend Extermination Alliance is moving now, and we should be wary of rats on the mountain. Also, the Duanlan branch's patriarch has emerged from the mountain. We'll have to guard against the patriarchs of the other sects as well. Lastly, I've located a darknet branch. I'll consult Yi Jixing about this and will report back once I know more. Regards, Ming Shi Yin. After reading, Zhao Yue asked, Master, what should we do now? Lu Zhou spoke calmly. It's about time we bring the enmity between the evil sky pavilion and the 10 great sects to an end. At this moment, a female disciple walked into the eastern pavilion. Looking shaken, Pavilion Master, Miss Fifth. This is bad. Elder Pan. He's grievously injured. Zhao Yue was shocked. She asked, grievously injured? How come? I don't know. At this moment, Lu Zhou walked out of the eastern pavilion with his hands on his back. Although his expression was calm, he was inwardly confused and suspicious. The timing of this incident is too suspicious. When he recalled the content of Ming Shi Yin's letter, he could not help but think this had something to do with the 7 great sects. Zhao Yue and the female disciple bowed at once when they saw Lu Zhou. Where's he? Mr. Third and Mr. Eighth have gone down the mountain. Lu Zhou waved his sleeve. His wizened face seemed calm, but a slight hint of fury could be seen between his brows. Lu Zhou only recalled being under pressure when he faced the 10 great sects when he had just transmigrated over here. At that time, he had lost his cultivation base and the rascals all had agendas of their own. It had been a trying time for him. After he fended off the 10 great sects, Lu Zhou had gained item cards and never thought much about the noble path ever since. Unfortunately, the evil sky pavilion was too eye-catching a target. It was inevitable that there would always be people who covet what they perceived contained troves of treasures. As it turned out, those people had come together and formed an alliance. Under the pretext of upholding justice, they fooled the world and gained a good reputation. At this moment, Lu Zhou stood outside the evil sky pavilion and waited with his hands on his back. Shortly after, he saw Duan Musheng and Zhu Honggong carrying a stretcher up the mountain. They stopped when they saw their master outside the evil sky pavilion. Then, they carefully lowered Pan Lishan onto the ground. Master, Leng Luo and Pan Zheng, who had hurried over when they heard the news, frowned when they saw the state Pan Lishan was in. Although Leng Luo frequently bickered with Pan Lishan and was often at odds with Pan Lishan, they had forged a camaraderie. How could he not feel shocked when he saw Pan Lishan now? Pan Zheng was even more shocked. Since the two of them met, Pan Lishan had been guiding him in his cultivation. Pan Lishan did not hold back anything and patiently taught him. Even his father did not treat him so kindly. It was impossible for him to be unaffected by this sight. On the other hand, Duan Musheng and Zhu Honggong were not as emotional. Old Pan Zheng cried out before he checked Pan Lishan's breathing. Leng Luo said, "Let me." Pan Zheng stepped to the side. Leng Luo placed a palm on Pan Lishan's body. After examining Pan Lishan's body, he said, "These are signs of him burning his sea of qi. He's injured to begin with. And now, he has burned his sea of qi. Old Pan, are you out of your mind?" Duan Musheng said, "When I found him, he was lying at the foot of the mountain. I think he was fighting someone." Zhu Honggong said furiously, "Who dares to sneak into the evil sky pavilion? How despicable and shameless. If I ever run into them, I'll tear them to a million pieces." Leng Luo pushed his palm forward and injected some primal qi into Pan Lishan's sea of qi. He seemed to have forgotten he was injured as well as he tried to heal Duan Ling Qian without a care for himself. Upon seeing this, the others had a hard time believing this was the same man who was at the top of the blacklist 300 years ago. Leng Luo had a reputation for killing not healing. A short while later, Leng Luo lifted his palm. He took a deep breath and said, "Nearly half of his sea of qi has been burned." His outlook isn't optimistic. He suddenly remembered how Lu Zhou pulled Yong Ning back from the brink of death. And he hastily added, "I think the pavilion master is the only one who can heal him." Everyone instinctively turned to look at Lu Zhou. Lu Zhou gauged Pan Lishan's injuries. At the same time, he was also inwardly wondering if the fourth heavenly writing power would be able to treat someone who had burned his or her sea of qi. Although he was not sure, there was nothing left to do but to try using the heavenly writings healing technique. Even the critical heal card would only relieve Pan Lishan's pain. It would be able to restore his sea of qi. Once a person's sea of qi was destroyed, that person would cease to be a cultivator. Moreover, this was not Pan Lishan's first time destroying his sea of qi. This was his second time. His old wounds had yet to heal, and he was injured again. One could only imagine how difficult it would be to heal him. "Stand back," Lu Zhou said. Leng Luo, Pan Zheng, Duan Musheng, and Zhu Honggong hastily stepped back and made way for Lu Zhou. Lu Zhou walked up to Pan Lishan and raised his right hand. The moment his sleeve fell, a faint blue lotus appeared in his palm. The others held their breaths. They were witnessing a familiar scene. They felt the powerful vitality from the blue lotus in Lu Zhou's palm and the terrifying force in the blue lotus. Under his silver mask, Leng Luo's eyes gleamed. He looked at the blue lotus in shock. They had not seen what happened inside the room when Lu Zhou treated Yong Ning since the doors and windows were closed. In a way, this was their first time witnessing this. The blue lotus swirled and rippled like the tide. When the blue lotus was about the right size, Lu Zhou pushed it down. The blue lotus fell on Pan Lishan's chest and spun before it laid down its roots. A bluish energy rippled into the surroundings. The strong vitality and healing power of the blue lotus healed Pan Lishan's sea of qi and the wounds that were already present. After 15 minutes, the blue lotus disappeared into thin air. At this moment, Pan Lishan began to cough. The others were overjoyed. "He's awake." Pan Zheng hastily helped Pan Lishan up. When Pan Lishan opened his eyes, he felt as though he had emerged from a world of darkness into a world of light. He blinked a few times before confirming he was, indeed, alive. He looked around himself. He saw the happy and relieved expressions on everyone's faces. "Old Pan, you gave us quite a scare. Are you all right? Who did this to you? You're lucky the pavilion master was here. Otherwise, you'd be dead. At that time, all I can do is watch over your grave." Pan Zheng nudged Pan Lishan's shoulder, causing Pan Lishan to cough again. Pan Lishan's mind was clearer now. When he heard Pan Zheng's words, he said contemptuously, "Oh, shut up, I won't die yet." Acting tough. Pan Zheng was rendered speechless by Pan Lishan's behavior. Pan Lishan cupped his fists at Lu Zhou and said, "Thank you, Pavilion Master." Lu Zhou stroked his beard and nodded before he said, "Who did this to you? You can tell us without fear." Pan Lishan sighed softly and recounted the sequence of events to Lu Zhou. When he finished recounting what happened, he added, "I wanted to meet Feng Qing'er and get to the bottom of the matter. However, Feng Lu tried to kill halfway through our journey. Feng Qing'er's first disciple, Feng Lu, is a shady character. When I was attacked, I had no choice but to burn my sea of qi. It's just as well. From this day onward, my debt toward Feng Qing'er can be considered paid." As Lu Zhou expected, Pan Lishan had been assaulted after he left the evil sky pavilion. "Your debt is paid," Duan Musheng frowned slightly. To the others, Pan Lishan seemed to have received the short end of the stick. Feng Qing'er had secretly helped me when I wanted to leave the Clarity sect back then. No matter, my life isn't something valuable. I'm glad to have lived until today. Pan Lishan said before he chuckled wryly. They think I'm a dead. I'd crawl back up from hell to the evil sky pavilion if I had to. The others felt shocked as they looked at Pan Lishan. At this moment, Pan Lishan felt someone looking at him. He turned and saw Lu Zhou looking at him. Lu Zhou's expression was the same as usual, making it difficult for him to discern Lu Zhou's thoughts. You think that it can be repaid? What do you mean, Pavilion Master? Elder Pan, it seems like you've lived in vain all these years. Why don't you understand this simple concept? Lu Zhou shook his head and sighed. Do you know how many out there are waiting for me to kick the bucket? Do you know how many are waiting to trample on the evil sky pavilion? Pan Lishan was speechless. Lu Zhou's words were right. Even if he considered the debt paid, would Zhengkung branch share the same sentiment? Lu Zhou turned around with his hands on his back. He looked at the foot of Golden Court Mountain and said, I'll remember this transgression from Zhengking branch. I can't be blamed for holding a grudge or being heartless. If there was to be any order in the world, the evil sky pavilion could not endure the numerous provocations by these people. Zhu Honggong said at once. You're right, Master. Quote. The others looked at Zhu Honggong. He tried to imitate his master's manner but only looked like a fool instead. Unlike little Yuan, it sounded unnatural when these words were said by him. Pan Lishan nodded and said nothing else. Lu Zhou said, Your Sea of Qi isn't completely healed yet. You should recuperate. Thank you. Pan Lishan stood up and bowed deeply at Lu Zhou. Lu Zhou felt it was worthwhile to use his heavenly writing power this time around, even though he had depleted 1/3 of the power. With this, he confirmed the heavenly writing power could heal these injuries. However, if he wanted to heal his target completely, he would at least need 2 or 3 times the amount of his extraordinary power. That was too much. It was true that it was easier to break than to mend. A person's body had thousands upon thousands of vessels. The Sea of Qi was the most precious part of the cultivator. It was never an easy task to heal it. If he did not have the heaven writing power, Pan Lishan would have been as good as dead with the injuries he had suffered. Escort him back, Lu Zhou ordered. Understood. Pan Zheng brought Pan Lishan back to his quarters. At this moment, little Yuan came running from the eastern pavilion. When she saw Pan Zheng supporting Pan Lishan, she curiously asked, Master, what happened to Elder Pan? He sustained internal injuries due to his own stupidity. There's no need to bother about him. Lu Zhou replied. Upon hearing this, Pan Lishan staggered and nearly fell over. He could not retort since it was the pavilion master who called him stupid. All he could do was lean on Pan Zheng's shoulder and said, Walk faster. Can you walk faster in this state? Just do as I say. Pan Lishan said through a fit of coughs. The two of them hastened and vanished from sight. Duan Musheng and Zhu Honggong were slightly stunned by how Pan Lishan did not seem injured at all. Zhu Honggong asked, Master, is old Pan putting up an act? Blabbermouth. Lu Zhou glanced at him pointedly. I'll slap myself right away. Smack. Zhu Honggong slapped himself. Quote. Lu Zhou ignored Zhu Honggong. He noticed little Yuan holding a letter in her hand. He asked, There's a letter. It's from the shameless Jiang Aijian. I'll read it. Little Yuan opened the letter and read aloud. Old Senior, there are 2 things I want to report. Firstly, there's a report from Liang province that the people of Ruli have suddenly crossed the heavenly moat and attacked them. With Si Wuya out of the picture, the Nether sect has weakened considerably. The Nether sect is currently engaged in a battle with Ruli's forces. In my opinion, they'll be at it for some time. Secondly, be careful of the Fiend Extermination Alliance. You must survive. I can only hide and watch from a distance, okay? EWW. What a vile and disgusting way to end his letter. Little Yuan tore the letter to shreds and threw it onto the ground before she gritted her teeth and stepped on the shredded paper. Zhu Honggong was speechless and depressed when he looked at little Yuan. It seemed like he would be bullied his entire life. Lu Zhou stroked his beard and nodded. I see. Then, he made his way back to the eastern pavilion. Rest well, Master. The three disciples bowed in unison. Zhu Honggong said, "Those sects from the noble path are too despicable. No, we must find a way to deal with them." Duan Musheng looked at Zhu Honggong disdainfully before he turned around and left. "You're right." Zhu Honggong scratched his head. "I'll speak to 7th senior brother about this. He'll think of something. I can wear my boxing gloves and kill all of them." Zhu Honggong did not waste any time. It was not long before he arrived at the Cave of Reflection. He was in no hurry to enter. Instead, he poked his head into the cave and inspected the situation inside. "Get out!" Si Wuya's tone sounded hostile. "Ha, 7th senior brother, why? Why are you still studying that? Didn't you hear me? I said, get out." Zhu Honggong chuckled sheepishly. "I'm not inside the cave. How am I supposed to get out? No, wait, I'm here because of an urgent matter. 7th senior brother, the Noble Path has formed a Fiend Extermination Alliance. They're planning to lay siege on Golden Court Mountain again. Quickly think of a countermeasure." Zhu Honggong said. "Fiend Extermination Alliance." Si Wuya placed the papers in his hand on the table. He looked up with dark circles around his eyes as he asked, "Who told you this?" "Some guy called Jiang Shaojian." Jiang Ijian. Si Wuya frowned slightly. Jiang Ijian was a dependable source. "That's right, that Jiang Shaojian," Zhu Honggong exclaimed. Si Wuya frowned and said, "Only 7 of the 10 great sects remain. After failing twice, I'm sure they've made all the necessary preparations this time. How's Master faring recently? He seems normal. I can't help but have a feeling that Master's idling away in his room. Nobody knows what he's doing there." Zhu Honggong replied. Si Wuya looked at Zhu Honggong. "Is that what you think of Master?" Zhu Honggong immediately covered his mouth. "How are the 3 old men's cultivation bases?" Si Wuya asked. "Don't get me started. That fellow Pan Lishan was duped by a bunch of people and was ganged up on. If Master didn't do something, he would have died by now. Elder Hua is skilled in tortoise defense skills, but he's not much use in offense. Elder Leng has great mobility and is as slick as a loach. However, in a direct fight, none of them is a match for Pan Lishan." It was the truth. After all, Pan Lishan possessed the heaven-grade weapon, the wine gourd bottle. He was a true Taoist elite. In that case, the evil Sky Pavilion might be in danger. That Hua Yuxing isn't too bad. She's almost a 3-leaf godly archer, Zhu Honggong said. If this were in the past, a cultivator with 5 leaves or less might have been a great help. However, it's different now. It's not enough to serve as a deterrent. With the rumors of severing one's golden lotus and masters approaching great limit running rampant, it's likely that the 7 great sects might decide to take a gamble. Si Wuya said. What should we do then? Zhu Honggong asked, slightly worried. Inform eldest senior brother about this. Yu Zhenghai appeared in Si Wuya's mind immediately. They could only turn this situation around if Yu Zhenghai and the 4 great protectors showed up. What a terrible coincidence. The people of Ruli have attacked Liang province and are engaged in a battle with eldest senior brother. Zhu Honggong said. Si Wuya frowned again. Was this truly a coincidence? Any word from second senior brother? Si Wuya asked. Well, no. Si Wuya's calm expression turned slightly grim. I think eldest senior brother is being plotted against. With second senior brother missing, it seems like the evil Sky Pavilion can only count on me. Zhu Honggong was speechless. Aren't you worried that you'd be clobbered by Master for talking like that? Old 8th. In 2 days, by hook or by crook. You must convince Master to unseal my cultivation base. Remember that, no matter what. Oh, yeah, you're a 6-leaf cultivator as well. 7th senior brother. Zhu Honggong smacked his own thigh. Ow! A pig-like squeal resounded in the Cave of Reflection. He forgot that he was wearing his boxing gloves again. Meanwhile, on Wuxian Mountain, the nobleman country was a nation that never knew spring. It was perpetually stuck in winter, and the landscape was always white with snow. Today, however, Wuxian Mountain welcomed the rare sunshine. The golden globe shone its rays through the canopy of leaves onto the clean and white snow. It seemed like something out of a painting. Outside the Melilot grave, a small group of cultivators was furtively digging and picking at the stone door. It's FC King freezing here. Put your backs to it. The mark on the map should be correct. This is the Melilot graveyard that vanished from the world more than 300 years ago. Boss, this is our first time digging a grave of the other tribes. I'm so excited. Technically, the nobleman country isn't part of the other tribes. The victor becomes the king while the loser is outlawed. It has been branded into the annals of history. It'll be almost impossible to rewrite it. Who cares about the tribe? It'd better not be empty or I'd be worked up for nothing. Click, clack. With the collective effort of the 5 men, the stone door buzzed and slid open. The 5 of them hurried into the Melilot graveyard. Boss, what's that? One of them pulled their leader. He pointed at the pack of wolves that appeared on a mound before the Melilot graveyard. Wild wolves. This is a bad sign. We should get out of here. I heard that a graveyard guarded by wolves isn't an auspicious place. You're scared? You can leave if you are. Don't count on us to give you a share of the loot though. The others had no qualms about venturing forth. They walked deeper into the Melilot graveyard. They were finally here and would not call it quits before achieving their goals. They passed through a walkway and entered a dim tunnel. Then, they arrived at a huge and wide area. The piles of bones made them click their tongues in wonder. They searched for valuable items while guarding against any possible traps. After searching for some time, they merely found some valuables on 2 skeletons and nothing else. Boss, look, one of them pointed at another door. Light was shining down from above. Shush! The leader's eyes brightened as he caught a glimpse of a sword on the floor beyond the door. He had an eye for treasure. The moment he set eyes on it, he was instantly attracted by the scarlet glow of the sword. His heart skipped a beat as he exclaimed excitedly, Heaven grade! Heaven grade! The others looked elated. Jackpot! We're rich! With a heaven grade weapon, they could feast like kings for the rest of their lives. The 5 of them were now attracted by the sword on the floor. They moved closer and closer. They saw the scattered projectiles on the floor when they reached the stone door. The leader frowned. Be careful of hidden weapons. Perhaps some of our colleagues were here before us. Colleagues? Is that sword theirs? The leader of this gang of 5 was a cultivator with an acceptable cultivation base. He could easily move an item remotely. He was worried there might be hidden contraptions beyond the stone door. Hence, he smiled as he raised a hand and said, Who cares who it belongs to? Come to Papa. Whiz. The sword shook. It merely vibrated on the ground. I can't seem to move it with my Brahmin Sea Realm cultivation base. The 5 of them began to discover something was amiss. Well, let's see about that. He raised his palm, condensed a huge amount of primal chi into energy, and sent it toward the sword. He gritted his teeth from the effort and of unleashing all his primal chi. Whiz, whiz, whiz. The longevity sword shook violently. Go, boss. Just a little more. Almost there. Almost. The cultivation bases of the other 4 were weak. They could only cheer him on. They looked at the shaking sword that would not even move even though their leader was in the Brahmin Sea Realm. They were even more convinced that the sword was an extraordinary heaven-grade weapon. When they thought about this, they almost drooled. Whiz. It moved. The blade of the sword suddenly shone with a scarlet light as it hovered in the air and shot toward them. Swoosh. The sword glinted briefly as it slashed across 4 men's throats. With a bang, the Brahmin Sea Realm cultivator flipped backward and fell to his knees. He regarded the sword in extreme shock. He turned around to look and saw his 4 comrades were looking at him with wide eyes. Their hands were holding their necks while their other hands pointed at him. Boss, you. It wasn't me. Before he could explain himself. Thud. The 4 men fell to the ground. No longer breathing. The sword hovered beyond the stone door. It was hovering horizontally before it flipped and plunged its tip to the ground. Bam! The cover of the well instantly cracked in half. The instant the cover of the well broke, the sword's blade shone even more brightly with a scarlet glow. The leader of grave diggers felt a chill run up his spine. His face was drenched in sweat as he rubbed his eyes. Down his spine, there seemed to be a phantom before his eyes. When his eyes adjusted, the phantom had taken on substance. A green-robed swordsman with long hair that fell to his shoulders. A chiseled face, and a gaze that was both gentle and cold at the same time appeared before him. You. The grave digger leader felt a warm trickle down his legs. He could not stop it. It felt scalding in this cold place. His legs trembled violently. The green-robed swordsman said emotionlessly, "Trespassers of the Melilot graveyard shall die." The gravedigger was in the Brahman Sea Realm cultivator. After all, before Yu Shangrong, he could not find it in himself to resist. He had only heard about the sword devil whose name shocked the heavens. However, he had no idea the person before him now was the sword devil himself. He was paralyzed with fear. He had thought a monster had appeared to take their lives. Humans would lose the ability to move their limbs under extreme fear. This was what the gravedigger was currently experiencing. He wanted to open his mouth to beg for mercy, but under the pressure of Yu Shangrong's cold expression and aura, he could not speak at all. When he looked up, he noticed Yu Shangrong was not looking at him at all. Instead, Yu Shangrong was looking outside. He wondered what was going through Yu Shangrong's mind. At this moment, he realized the person before him was no ghost. It was a person hiding in the Melilot graveyard. At this moment, the howl of wolves traveled through the forest and across the pure white landscape. The sound of the wild wolves pulled the gravedigger's thoughts back to the present. Yu Shangrong finally turned to look at the gravedigger. He remained silent as he walked toward the gravedigger. The gravedigger finally managed to stammer out, You, who are you?" Yu Shangrong glanced at the 4 corpses on the ground as he made his way to the exit. His attention was focused on the sunlight outside. It was a scenic view. The sun was as warm as spring. 3 loud kowtows, Yu Shangrong said. His voice was as sharp as a knife. It was starkly different from his cultured and refined character in the past. The gravedigger dared not dally. He kowtowed loudly thrice at the piles of bones inside the Melilot graveyard. He felt his forehead turned numb after kowtowing. When he finally straightened his back, the longevity sword that was hovering inside the graveyard flashed. Swish! The longevity sword slashed the gravedigger's throat before it returned to Yu Shangrong's scabbard. The gravedigger's body was riveted to the spot. His eyes widened as a scarlet line bloomed across his neck. Blood oozed down and joined the pool of blood from his comrades. The pool of blood resembled a blooming melilot. When he fell to the ground, the stone door of the Melilot graveyard slid shut. Everything was plunged into darkness. Yu Shangrong looked up at the pack of wolves that sat atop the mound. The pack of wolves howled. Their voices shook the branches nearby, and snow was dislodged. Facing the sunlight, Yu Shangrong smiled and said, "It's you guys again. Aura, I'm fine. Aura, I'll leave the rest to you guys. Aura, I'll take that as an okay." Yu Shangrong turned around slowly and walked in the southeastern direction. Perhaps, Yu Shangrong had not enjoyed the feeling of walking in the snow for a long time. He did not fly. He continued walking across the snowy field through the forest before he arrived in front of a mountain. Yu Shangrong raised his right hand and held it up. His avatar appeared. 100 Tribulations Insight avatar hovered above his palm. There was no golden lotus, merely 3 plump leaves spinning around it. A sword devil with a 3-leaf nascent divinity Tribulation Realm cultivation base. For the longest time, he would not even deign to look at cultivators at this level. They were weak, very weak, so weak that he did not think them worthy of his attention. Was he the weakest sword devil in history now? He recalled his avatar. Then, he flew into the skies and looked down at the area around Wuxian Mountain. The sea of snow extended in all directions. It seemed to stretch on forever. Yu Shangrong looked toward the southeast. He flew at top speed from the Green Jade Altar, and it took him 5 days to reach here. If he wanted to return, with his 3-leaf cultivation base, he would need 10 days. At least, this was the same path Yu Shangrong took in his youth. He was without a cultivation base back. However, he managed to pull through with just his willpower and physical strength alone. It took him several months to reach his destination. A faint smile flashed on his face as he looked down at the lands. Then, he flew in the southeastern direction. The sun set, and night came. Inside the cave of reflection, Si Wuya tossed the question paper to the side. Then, he rubbed his eyes without an air of pretense. He sighed and shook his head. There are all kinds of strange things in the world. Where did Master find these peculiar questions? Up until today, the first 2 questions were the only ones he managed to solve. He could not seem to work out the answers for the other questions. This made him dejected and irritable. The moonlight shone into the cave of reflection. A rustling noise rang in the air, alerting Si Wuya. Who's there? Si Wuya walked toward the cave's entrance and searched with his gaze. The sound was greatly muffled, but it did not escape Si Wuya's detection. Inner breath technique. Many cultivators would cultivate methods similar to the inner breath technique to facilitate their espionage missions. As the name suggested, the cultivator would breathe into his internal organs and pull back his energy. In all appearances, he would appear dead. However, this state could not be maintained for too long, for it was possible to suffer internal injuries. The main objective was to avoid detection from elites. Hence, the major sects formulated their own formations and barriers to guard against spies. A cultivator who cast an inner breath technique activated would be like a mortal. Firstly, they would not be able to pass through barriers. If they encountered any formation, they would also be captured. Golden Court Mountain's barrier was long gone. However, due to its reputation, the average cultivator would not dare come close to the evil sky pavilion. Who was this bold? A figure leaped out from the forest to the right of the cave of reflection. The moment the figure revealed itself, it fell to one knee in front of the cave and cried out. Sect Master! Si Wuya exclaimed in shock when he saw the person before him. Yi Jixing, what are you doing here? Shush! Yi Jixing looked around himself. He hurried toward the cave of reflection and took out a dagger. I'm bailing you out. Wait! Si Wuya raised a hand. Who sent you? Sect Master, time is of the essence. The 7 great sects have formed an alliance. When the time comes, there will be a bloodbath on Golden Court Mountain. It's dangerous for you to remain here. Yi Jixing surveyed his surroundings. When he discovered that Si Wuya's cultivation base had been sealed, he grew even more determined to rescue Si Wuya. Si Wuya shook his head and said, You've arrived just in time. Tell me about the 7 great sects. Sect Master, Yi Jixing raised his dagger anxiously. Si Wuya frowned slightly. His voice was low and imposing as he said, Yi Jixing. Yi Jixing was stunned. Si Wuya continued to say, Heed my command. Understood. Yi Jixing shuddered. He did not dare to oppose Si Wuya's command. When you leave, contact our sources in the 7 great sects. Find out about their trump cards. Si Wuya said. Understood. However, how should I keep you updated? Sect Master. Yi Jixing turned to look at the cliff against the night sky. He shuddered at the thought of having to overcome this hurdle every single time. Just send a letter to the evil sky pavilion. Si Wuya replied. Sect Master. Yi Jixing was baffled. I've made up my mind. Si Wuya said. Go and do as you're told. When he saw how serious Si Wuya was, Yi Jixing dared not spend a moment longer here. He turned around and ventured into the darkness. Meanwhile, Duan Musheng stood atop a huge tree outside the northern pavilion. He swept his gaze across the cave of reflection and mumbled to himself. I'll spare you this once out of consideration for Old 4th and Old 8th. I hope that you can be of help. After that, he dove toward a boulder halfway up the mountain. He stabbed his overlord's spear into a crack and stood there like a mountain deity. Daybreak. As usual, Lu Zhou stretched his limbs and did some simple exercises. Then, he checked his remaining life out of habit. It was reduced by 1 day. No surprises there. Then, he opened the door and walked out. Lu Zhou had barely walked out of the room when he saw Zhu Honggong sprawled on the floor outside. Peace to you, Master. May you live forever and ever. Top of the morning, Master. What is it? Lu Zhou asked. Master, the Fiend Extermination Alliance has gone too far. I've been thinking the entire night and thought of a good plan. Zhu Honggong said. Let's hear it. 7th senior brother has a 6-leaf cultivation base. If he has his peacock plume, even a 7-leaf cultivator would deem him formidable. Hence, I propose that we unseal his cultivation base. Zhu Honggong replied. Are you begging on his behalf? Lu Zhou had expected this. After all, Zhu Honggong had a good relationship with Si Wuya. They had always been on good terms. I dare not, but I just feel it's necessary for 7th senior brother to step up when the evil sky pavilion's in trouble. Zhu Honggong said. Do you think I can't deal with these sects on the noble path? Zhu Honggong started. He shuddered as he hastily said. That's not what I meant. I would never. Lu Zhou glanced at him and said, "You have the protection of your Zen tunic and the boxing gloves as your weapon. Although you have the 100 Tribulations Insight avatar, you've not managed to sprout a single leaf. If you have the time to plead for that rascal, you should use it to cultivate." Zhu Honggong kowtowed and said, "Yes, master." Zhu Honggong felt like crying. Why was this not going the way he had imagined? His master's reply dismissed his ideas and destroyed his backbone in just an instant. He was not fit to plead on anyone's behalf. Tell that rascal that he has to stay in the cave of reflection until the memory crystal is found. Yes, master. Si Wuya was soon informed of this decision. He sat on the stone bench, perplexed. How is master going to defend the evil sky pavilion if he's being this stubborn? Zhu Honggong shook his head with a sigh and said, "I have no choice as well. If I said any more, I'd be sent into this cave as well. You're not to blame for this. By the way, have you heard from fourth senior brother?" Si Wuya asked. No, Zhu Honggong shrugged. He suddenly felt that none of them were dependable enough in this time of need. Si Wuya paced around the cave with his hands on his back. Even he felt that this was a difficult situation to solve. In the end, he waved his hand and said, "You should head back for now. I'll try to think of something." Zhu Honggong nodded and left. Night came as the breeze blew gently. Lu Zhou gauged the heavenly writing's extraordinary power. He had used 1/3 of it to heal Pan Lishan. He would need at least 5 days to restore it. Without thinking too much, he closed his eyes and continued to meditate on the heavenly writing scrolls. When he was in his meditative state, he would feel an extremely comfortable sensation and lose himself in the feeling. The unique scripts of the heaven writing scroll moved. This reminded Lu Zhou of the Sutra of the Heavenly Writing Powers. Before this, he could not read these scripts at all. However, the open heavenly writing scroll would group the scripts together to form the basic sutras. The open heavenly writing scroll seemed to have picked scripts from a sea of scripts to form sentences. Before he knew it, he fell into the immersive meditation state again. Like the previous day, Duan Musheng was shooting around the waist of the mountain with his overlord spear in his hands. He had thought today would be just as peaceful as any other day when he saw a flash of fire at the foot of Golden Court Mountain. Duan Musheng frowned. He activated his 100 Tribulations Insight avatar. The resonance of the avatar was enough to attract the attention of the evil sky pavilion. It was the equivalent of him alerting the others about this. Figures shot out of the southern pavilion and hovered in midair. Leng Luo's cultivation base was the most profound. He was also the first to arrive. He hovered at a high altitude and looked down at the foot of the mountain. The moonlight shone on his silver mask as he looked at Duan Musheng's 100 Tribulations Insight avatar and asked, "The 7 great sects are here. I'm not sure, but there's something fishy about that fire." Duan Musheng recalled his avatar and turned to look at it again. He manifested his avatar at the foot of the mountain to warn the people there away. At this moment, Hua Wudao appeared beside them in the air. He said, "Don't fall for their ploy to lure us away." Duan Musheng nodded. With Pan Lishan's experience serving as their reference, they were more cautious now. Meanwhile, Hua Yuxing appeared outside the Evil Sky Pavilion's Great Hall. With a tap of her feet, she landed on the highest point of the pavilion with movements as graceful as a swallow. She wielded her falling moon bow tightly. It resembled a slender and tough sculpture. Hua Wudao glanced at her and projected his voice. "Yuxing, Elder Hua, you'll keep watch tonight." Understood. Hua Yuxing was a 3-leaf godly archer now. With her abilities, so long as she had a high vantage point, she could hit anything in view. She was the best choice to keep watch throughout the night. At this moment, fire flashed in the distance again. Unlike before, the fire was forming a horizontal line as it traveled at a terrifying speed toward Golden Court Mountain like a red carpet. With the help of the wind, it shot toward Golden Court Mountain like the tide. A fire attack! Duan Musheng raised his overlord spear and shouted, "How dare you, Duan Musheng! Don't do anything rash!" Hua Wudao called out after Duan Musheng, who was about to leap into action to stop him. "Are we supposed to let the fire rage on?" Withered trees and weed dominated the foot of the mountain to begin with. The fire would soon spread to Golden Court Mountain in no time. Hua Wudao shook his head. Yuxing. I see them, at the top of the evil sky pavilion. Hua Yuxing wielded her falling moon bow that was now wrapped in golden energy. Whiz, whiz, whiz. The energy that wrapped around the falling moon bow was soon as tall as herself. She pulled on the bowstring with her right hand. A thick energy arrow appeared. The instant the energy arrow appeared, bam! The energy arrow was fired. At a distance away from Golden Court Mountain, it was nearly impossible to see the top of the evil sky pavilion. The moon shone behind it. Some of the cultivators who were setting fire to the forest heard a strange buzzing sound. Did someone activate their avatar on the mountain to try and scare us off again? Whoosh! They looked up and saw an energy arrow sailing toward them. Pooh! It penetrated the chest of one of the cultivators. The man widened his eyes. He looked incredulously in the direction of the evil sky pavilion. Then, he fell backward with a loud thud. Godly archer! When the others saw this, they were shocked. Quickly now. The fire is already going strong. Let's retreat. Fall back. Just when they turned around, several energy arrows flew toward them from the evil sky pavilion with the moon behind their backs. Pooh! 3 early-stage Brahman Sea Realm cultivators were struck. They fell to the ground, powerless to put up any resistance. The other cultivators scattered and fled. Yet, the fire was still spreading toward Golden Court Mountain. The wind was feeding the fire with much-needed oxygen. At the top of the evil sky pavilion, Hua Yuxing said, I've taken down 4 of them. I can't see the rest. They're well hidden, and I can't get a clean shot. Most of them have fled. I see. Hua Wudao nodded. Scoundrels will be scoundrels. Is this all they can do to the evil sky pavilion? Leng Luo shook his head. Duan Musheng looked at the incoming flames and said, Don't forget about the fire. Hua Wudao said in a booming voice. Allow me. He stepped forward in the air. Radiant circles spread out with every step he took as he descended.